Hello.
Hi there, Sean. How you doing?
Hi. So this is Sean from Dublin TEFL. I'm a teacher and teacher trainer based in Ireland.
And I'm Dan. I'm a freelance teacher and I'm in Barcelona.
And we're going to talk to you today about TALC or the Authentic Listening Collective. Um, yeah.
Right. It would be interesting to know, Sean, why this began because you started this project and it sort of developed from there. But what was your reasoning behind it and how did it get going?
So this project is started, I was thinking it's about 7 or 8 years ago now. The original name was the TD Lab Staff Room. The idea being this was about teacher development, the idea of a staff room being a sort of community of practice where people share ideas and share audio. I mean, the whole group is about requesting and sharing audio. So you can ask another teacher or another person in the group to send a recording very quickly about a topic to answer a question that you can then go away and use. So it started very much as that idea, I suppose, with a lot of
Hmm.
people working online. Maybe they don't have access to a staff room where they can quickly ask a colleague or quickly ask someone for recordings.
Okay. And why particularly was it listening that you were interested in focusing on?
Well, that comes from the fact that a lot of published material at the time, and even now, isn't particularly authentic. It's largely scripted, and a lot of the time, audio is used in course books and courseware as a model. So it's a model to analyze for language, maybe for vocabulary, maybe for grammar. And that's why it's very carefully scripted. In that scripting process, you lose a lot of authenticity, you lose a lot of features of natural spoken discourse that are important for listeners, especially learner listeners, to get to grips with. So the main focus, the original idea, was to collect a lot of text, a lot of recorded text, which are much more authentic and you'd be able to use in a variety of ways in the classroom.
Hmm. Yes, exactly. And it started on Facebook perhaps, and we've moved to WhatsApp now.
That's right. That's right. So
And
you yourself set up the WhatsApp group. Dan, maybe tell us a little bit about how that's going. What's happening in the WhatsApp group?
yeah, it's developing quite well. And the technology we have available to us these days is you can press and you can record. When
Yeah,
it was on Facebook originally, it's still quite easy, but there was a
yeah,
few things, the hurdles that people probably had to take.
yeah,
But now, and even now with WhatsApp, you put the recording from the WhatsApp and you can transfer it on your phone, 2 seconds to a drive. It's already in the right format.
yeah.
And the idea you told us about and we developed is the fact that we want these to be really authentic. We want them to be spontaneous. Like
Exactly.
you hit record, you don't think about it as the speaker. We can talk about the sort of
Yeah.
questions that we
Let's
ask,
have a
but
look,
yeah.
maybe. Yeah, so I'm going to show the Facebook group, which is still active. So you have almost a choice. If you're a Facebook person, you can join the Facebook group. If you're a WhatsApp person, you can join that or join both. Like us. Here's an example. Okay, you've got the original title, which is now changed to the Authentic Listening Collective. But here's a great one. Hello, everyone. If anyone has time, please give me 30 to 60 seconds. They're usually short recordings on, and this is particularly good because it has a very clear question. What have you been watching recently? Okay, so it's a very authentic question you might ask a friend, another English speaker, and everyone can come in on the comments and add their recordings. Do you remember this one, Dan?
Yes, yes. One of the earlier ones, and
Yeah,
um, what I love about these recordings is not just, perhaps we'll talk about it, the smaller parts, the
yeah,
connected speech, but
yeah,
it's also the variety of language that comes up,
yeah,
and the grammar and vocab that people use that you probably wouldn't have thought of,
yeah,
or when you're looking at a course book, which actually is really typical.
yeah,
It might be things like in course books, you hear things like keen on, and I don't think
yeah,
I really use that. When I'm talking
yeah,
about what you're
yeah,
watching, you might say
yeah,
things like, "Oh, I'm hooked on," or other
yeah.
different phrases like that, which are really typical in natural speech, but for some reason they slip through the net in course
That's true.
books.
That's true. But thinking about that one, sometimes you notice patterns that certain things might be negative because I can imagine myself I'm not really keen on, as
Uh-huh.
opposed to saying I am keen on
Keen on.
something. So yeah, it's interesting to see how, little lexical chunks and even grammar appear in actual spoken discourse.
Hmm.
Here's an example from the WhatsApp group. This is WhatsApp web, and I'm showing just yourself, Dan, because there's lots of
Yeah.
other people. I don't want to share their details and names, but here's a good example as well. What's this one about?
Okay, so this is from one of the prepare books, so it's for teenagers. This is
Oh, okay,
pre-exam type stuff. I think it was perhaps
right,
the early B2.
yeah,
And to be fair to the book, they do make videos at the start of each unit and they go into schools, and it's
yeah,
fairly authentic when they ask these teenagers, what do you spend your money on?
yeah.
But what I found is that they were all the same. It's like, oh, I spend money on fried chicken and takeaways and my nails, and it was stuff like
Uh-huh.
that, which is natural. It's what they said, but there wasn't much variety there.
Okay,
Um, and I just wanted more information. What other stuff could I teach them? And I actually used it more as a resource for language than I did for the recordings, although the
right.
recordings turned out to be very useful as well for the
So that's a
content.
good point. I think, this is a teacher-run group, and
Yeah.
teachers can use it in whatever way they see fit. Okay, so a lot of the time maybe you're on the lookout for language. A lot of the
Mhm.
time, maybe you're going to do a lesson looking at, more phonological aspects like connected speech and listening skills, for example. And maybe in another video, we'll have a look at the different things teachers do with these authentic recordings. But what I particularly like about this, again, is it's very clear. If you want to join a group and you want to make a post, if you have a clear question, rather than maybe talk for 20 seconds about money, that's very vague. This one's
Yeah.
very clear.
Yes.
What do you spend your money on? Do you ever waste money? Do you need money to be happy? I mean, these are questions I think reasonably authentic. I know it's come from
Hmm.
coursework, but it's the sort of thing you might chat about.
Yeah.
So there we go. Go into the group very quickly, type a message. Even people, maybe yourself, in the middle of a lesson, have requested things. I have
Definitely
in the
happened
visit,
in the last two
and
days.
and luckily it's come in at the end, and you can use that, with the
Yeah.
group, and that's really motivating for students.
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
they
I
love
don't
that.
know.
That when
Yeah,
you're being honest, you're saying, look, these are my friends,
exactly,
colleagues. This is what they
exactly.
think.
Yeah, yeah. And the first time I've used them, they've been sort of surprised, and then like,
Hmm.
really, is this really, your friend? And yeah, also there's some friends and family members as well that are great to get recordings off of. Um, Teachers were very good at empathizing with each other's situations and quickly responding. But it's great as well if other, even non-teaching professionals are involved.
Well, very
But
often, just quickly on that, is that
yeah,
if it's a non-teacher, they don't really know about grading the language. So even
right,
if they're empathetic to a non-native
exactly.
speaker, they
Yeah,
don't know how to grade the language. They might speak a bit slower, but they're still going to use this
yeah,
connected speech.
yeah,
So it's really
yeah.
natural stuff.
Absolutely. And just on that, in terms of mentioning non-native speakers, this is not a group where we're just collecting audio from people who grew up speaking English as a first
Of
language.
course, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, everybody is welcome. There's lots of different first language groups in there, and don't be at all shy. There's no compulsory minimum to contributions, but absolutely, it's there for everybody, and the variety of different speech
Yeah,
varieties is
exactly.
one of the strengths again. Should we have a quick look at what's in the G drive, Dan? Because just to give a
Yes.
flavour of how much there is in here, I mean, these are the different topics. Okay, some of them are a little bit more transparent than others.
Mhm.
So, like we have annoyances, for example, or around town directions, talking about going cashless. Any of these stand out as particular favourites for you, Dan?
Oh, I mean, there's one longest journeys, and it's actually a recording that you made many moons
Okay,
ago. And I
okay.
must, without exaggerating, I've created a lesson and
Oh yeah,
I've improved it and improved it and improved it. And it takes time to make these lessons as perfect
yeah,
as you want them. But the,
yeah.
the time you put in saves you so much time in the long run. I must have
Right.
done that lesson 150 times,
Oh,
in the space of 7 years.
I haven't
So
looked in here.
it's
Look at that. There's so much stuff in there. Sometimes, yeah. Look, some of these folders even
yeah,
have slides in. Some just have the audio. Some have a
yeah,
transcript. And again, it's there for teachers to use however they want.
exactly.
Then what you sometimes have in the groups is some sort of chat and discussion about how we use it or problems learners had, and that's also very interesting. Um, Perhaps I'll hand over to you now, Dan, if
Yeah.
you'd like to maybe share a quick audio clip
Sure.
so people can get a flavour of
Yeah.
what's actually there in the drive.
Excellent. I think I'm sending my audio.
Right. So
I'll
this
just
is the
quickly,
money one, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
Or not?
Um, sorry, yeah, where was it? There. Yeah. So that was based on the one we saw earlier, where it was 3 questions. I did,
Hmm.
and talking about instructions on the WhatsApp group and being clear, I specifically wanted it to be 3 separate recordings. So
Great.
the first question one, then the other, then the other. Um, and very quickly on instructions as well, we talked about sometimes it's better to be short. Sometimes you might want it to be a bit more freeform because you can get
Hmm.
into some really interesting stories and do longer length stuff. But yeah, and I did ask for this, and I asked them to speak as naturally as possible without thinking. And let's have a look here. So I've got Ashley. Ashley's one of these non-teachers, so she's
Okay.
just speaking from the heart, basically. So let's have a listen.
Most of our money goes on just the everyday bills and groceries. Groceries in particular seem to be very expensive these days. Other than that, it would be on work that needs doing on our house at the moment. That is never ending.
So there you go.
Great.
I think she was just putting stuff away while shopping at the same time,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's absolutely fine. And
Yeah.
there are little things like other than that, you know, you
Exactly.
got that from 20 seconds, and that's
Yeah.
quite a typical phrase. Other than that, and the
Yeah.
way it sounds, the connected speech.
Hmm. And for a
Yeah.
learner listener, that's going to present a challenge as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
The so-called sort of Richard Cordwell's squeeze zones, shall we say, of
Yes.
those unstressed parts of the tone unit. Other than that, they'll just hear that as a bit of a blur. So yeah,
Mhm.
raising awareness of those features is something I love to do in class, and learner listeners find particularly useful. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So even just that 20 seconds of presumably, if you added all of the audios together, hours of
Hmm.
materials there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and some of it undiscovered. People have
Yeah.
recorded it. We put it on there, not had a chance to listen to it. So there's so much
Yeah.
stuff to mine from that.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
It's something I'm on my mind to do, sort of go through maybe and sort of do a monthly highlight. What's
That'd be
been
nice.
on
Yeah.
on the group this
Yeah.
month. But there we have it. Okay, so we've got a bit of an idea of the history of the group. We've had a look at both the Facebook group and the WhatsApp group and how it works. Very simply, you put in a request, people respond to the request. People can be, quite active. They can be dormant and then suddenly reactive, and you can mute notifications, of course,
Yes.
if you're finding it's getting too much. But it's a great place to go and get involved if you too, like us, are looking for examples of authentic audio and very quick, easy things that you can use in your classroom. So
Yeah.
it would be great to see you there.
Exactly. And they're always there, and they'll be there hopefully forever. So much material.
Indeed. All right. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back talking about how we use some of these recordings in a future video. All the best.
Excellent. Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye bye.